Hi, Tim here again, and welcome to another episode of Tim on Everything. Yay! Well, here I am, February, somewhere in the Indian Ocean between Sri Lanka and India, working my way to India. It's been a pretty boring passage. God almighty, there's nothing to do. But what I want to talk about today is I've had lots of people ask me, gee, Tim, how come so many pilots end up sailing? And the answer is pretty obvious to me as a pilot. The physics is exactly the same. If you have an airplane, you have this thing called a wing. And the wing is also known as an airfoil. It's got a very specific shape. You have a leading edge in the front and the trailing edge in the back. If you were to draw a line from the leading edge to the trailing edge, you'd have what they call the chord line. Now, what's unique about this airfoil, this wing, is the top surface has more of a curve to it than the bottom surface. And in fact, if you were to look at the distance between the chord line and the surface, it's known as the camber. So the upper surface of the wing has more of a camber than the lower surface of the wing. And that's done specifically because now as the wing is moving forward through this fluid known as air, and the air separates to go around the wing, the air that flows over the top of the wing, because of the bigger camber, the more curve, has to travel a farther distance than the airflow that's going underneath the wing. As a result, the airflow over the top has to go faster. And as a result of going faster, it generates a low pressure on top of the wing relative to a slightly higher pressure underneath the wing. So it tends to lift the wing. Well, that phenomenon is now known as Bernoulli's principle, named after the 18th century Swiss scientist Daniel Bernoulli. And that's how airplanes fly, that and a little bit of Newton's second law. Of course, a lot of people that claim that money makes the airplane fly, and that's probably true as well. But what about a boat? Let's look at my jib here, and maybe I can try to get back a little bit without killing myself, rocking and rolling a tad. But if you notice, the top of the jib, the outside, has a curve to it. And just like the airplane's wing, the airflow going around the outer section of this sail has to follow that curve. It has to go a longer distance than the airflow following the inner surface of the curve. As a result, it has to go faster. As a result, it generates a slight low pressure. And as a result, it kind of lifts the sail forward. Now, airplane wings, when they go through the air, it's called the relative wind. Sails, when they go through the air, it's called the apparent wind. But the physics is exactly the same. There's only one point of sail where the wind actually pushes the boat, and that's if the wind is directly behind the sails, behind the boat, known as running. Otherwise, what causes sails to move sailboats forward is the same physics that causes wings to generate lift. And in fact, when the sails are moving the boat forward, when they're being very efficient, the phenomenon is also called lift. Now, if the angle between the apparent wind and the sail changes significantly, the sail will start to vibrate and luff. If the angle between the chord line of the wing on an airplane and the relative wind changes very abruptly, the airplane will stall. Again, exactly the same phenomenon. So, you know, when people ask, well, gee, how come there's so many pilots that are sailors? Pilots learn the physics. It's the same, exactly the same, no difference whatsoever. If you were to look at the America Cup racing boats, you Google that and take a look at that. I swear it looks like they've just taken a 737 wing and moved it vertical. And in fact, underneath sailboats is this thing called a keel. And the keel is essentially doing the same thing. Bernoulli's principle on the keel, except of course the keel is going through the fluid medium of water and not air. There are other reasons as well, I think, that pilots and sailors are so similar. I mean, you know, the navigation between a boat and a plane is essentially the same. The communications, boat and the plane, are essentially the same. Risk management, boat and the plane, are essentially the same. Emergencies, boat and plane, are basically the same. Heck, even a sextant, and I've been teaching a lot of sextant classes. You know, boats use sextants as a traditional method of navigation using publication 229, and in the day up until the early 1960s, airplanes use sextants using publication 249. So there are a lot of similarities, a lot of crossovers. But the primary one, again, is the physics of Bernoulli's principle and the fact that the sail, because it has a curve, does not necessarily get pushed by the wind behind. It gets sucked forward due to the low pressure created on the forward leading edge of the sail due to Bernoulli's principle. Well, anyways, morning here again. Hopefully I'll get to India in 2 or 3 days, and then it's for me off to Djibouti, and then through the Red Sea, and finally into the Mediterranean. And it's February 25 now, I think. I hope to be back in the United States around Christmas, so I still got quite a ways to go. But you'll be hearing from me again. Anyways, have a great time. Tim out.